The time is at hand.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
But I am telling you right now,
we need a great reset.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
From 659 feet up in the Appalachian Mountains, in a little county called Mingo, in a little village called Chatteroy, my home of 48 years, you're in Dark Places. My name is Junebug Fugit. I'm your Huckleberry. This week on the show, we're taking a little European vacation. National Lampoon's European Vacation was released on July 26, 1985. It stars Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Dana Hill, Jason Lively, Victor Lanoux, and Eric Idle. It was the second film released in the National Lampoon's Vacation series. The first stop on our European vacation takes us to France. The Varloop is an evil and nocturnal fantastic creature from the land of Oath. Contrary to widespread belief, it is not a werewolf, but rather a cousin of it, since it can be transformed into other animals than a wolf. This monster was originally a man or a woman with a corrupt soul, guilty of the 7 deadly sins and allowed to be possessed by the devil. It can mainly take the form of a wolf, but also a fox, a boar, a goat, or any other animal related to the beast, to harm with impunity. The Varloop metamorphoses at midnight after having coated its body with a mixture of unspeakable ingredients and having addressed a plea to Satan. Once transformed, he walks in the forest without making a sound, slitting and skinning dogs and cattle and drinking the blood of his victims as vampires do. The sight of this liquid is also so exciting for him that he only calms down by shedding blood in his turn. It's impossible to kill this creature, their only fear being the first glimmers of the day when it returns to human form. On the other hand, when he is wounded, even though he is insensitive to pain and heals very quickly, he still retains scars, even in his human form. His eyes are the power to set the fodder and the straw on fire. Moreover, several testimonies report a furtive and disturbing figure, half man, half beast, seen after a night fire. It is easily recognizable in its human form, with the reddish spot present at the bottom of its spine, or the mark in the shape of a fork on his shoulder. It is a very vicious and clever being who does not let himself be easily trapped. He always takes either to erase any trace of his existence and to make the curious disappear. And now we're going to Ireland to meet up with Mr. Haunted.
Let's continue our trip. And we're going to stop in Ireland. It may be known as the Island of Saints and Scholars due to its literary tradition and high-quality learning institutions. But Ireland is also a land of myths and legends, a place where superstition runs deep, and the banshee wails in the dead of night. Holy mackerels! From haunted castles where ghosts freely roam to ancient satanic clubs that will chill you to the bone, Haunted Ireland has a lot to offer the thrill-seeking traveler. Take a trip around Ireland's most haunted places and prepare to be scared. Loftus Hall, County Wexford. Known as the most haunted house in Ireland and said to be haunted by the devil himself. The fate of Loftus Hall as one of the most haunted places in Ireland was perhaps set in stone due to its construction in 1350 during the time of the Black Death. However, the legend of Loftus Hall actually dates from the 18th century when a mysterious stranger came calling on the Tottenham family, who occupied the house at the time. Legend has it that the Tottenham daughter, Anne, soon realized that this mysterious stranger was none other than the devil himself, due to the fact that he had a cloven hoof in place of a foot. Soon after, the mysterious stranger disappeared when he flew through the roof. Anne, having brought shame on the family due to her supposed hysterics, was subsequently locked away in a room where she died several years later. It is said that Anne haunts Loftus Hall, which is said to be a hive of poltergeist activity to this very day. The devil also left his mark on Loftus Hall via a mysterious mark on the roof, which visitors can view via a pre-booked guided tour of the hall.
The Dullahan, which translates to without a head in Irish, is a type of fairy in Celtic mythology. He is depicted as a headless rider on a black horse, carrying his own head under one arm. Although the Dullahan is especially depicted as a male, there are some female versions of the tale as well. The terrifying fairy's mouth is usually in a gruesome grin that touches both sides of the head, as it is held under the rider's arm. The horseman's eyes are said to be quite sharp and can see across the countryside, even during the darkest of nights. If that description isn't terrifying enough, the Dullahan is said to have a human spine as a whip and uses skulls fashioned as lanterns, lit with candles to light his way. The wagon the Dullahan drags behind it is adorned with funeral objects. The wheel's spokes are made from high thigh bones, and the wagon's covering is made from a worn chewed paw or dried human skin. Like banshees, the Dullahan can foreshadow deaths. However, unlike the banshee, the Dullahan seems to have more control over who lives and dies. The ancient Irish believed that when the Dullahan stopped moving, a person was due to die. The Dullahan would call out the person's name, drawing away the soul of his victim, at which point the person immediately dropped dead. In ancient times, it is said that golden objects could force the Dullahan to disappear. At the time, gold was very valuable, so it was considered to be a great sacrifice to use golden objects to prevent the death of a loved one. The Dullahan was believed to embody Crom Dubh, a Totha de Danann, and the god of storms, death, sacrifice, and eternity.
Ballygally Castle, County Antrim. Said to be one of the most haunted places in all of Ulster. All of Ulster. The picturesque Ballygally Castle, which sits right on the coast, is said to be haunted by several different ghosts. The most well-known of these entities is the ghost of Lady Isabella Shaw. This so-called ghost of Ballygally has a penchant for knocking on bedroom doors in the dead of night. Though restless, Lady Isabella is said to be a friendly ghost who roams the halls looking for the child who was taken from her at birth by her cruel husband, Lord James. Once in possession of his heir, legend has it that Lord James locked his wife away in a tower where she fell, or was pushed, to her death sometime later. Today, visitors can climb a spiral staircase to view the ghost room where Lady Isabella lived out her tragic final days. While paying a visit to the ghosts of Ballygally, be sure to make time for the other attractions this scenic location has to offer. Ballygally Beach, a beautiful sandy beach with views that stretch for miles in all directions, sits directly opposite the castle, while the iconic Giant's Causeway is just an hour's drive away.
The Jervis Ghosts. To those who think that the specters of Ireland limit their territories to country roads at dusk, think again. Jervis Street, located in the middle of Dublin's city centre, has served as the backdrop for many an encounter with the unknown down through the years, proving that in actuality, ghosts can make their presence felt just about anywhere. The Jervis Shopping Centre, which opened in 1996, is the home of over 70 retailers and is a popular destination for many city-goers. However, not everyone knows that the center is built on the grounds of Jervis Street Hospital, which closed in the 1980s, after attending to the needs of the sick and the dying for over 300 years. Many locals claim that suspicious activities in the area can be attributed to the restless spirits of those who died in its wards. In 2008, a newsreader from popular Irish radio station Today FM was walking along the bustling street outside Jervis Shopping Centre, only to be stopped in her tracks by a female voice singing a lullaby nearby. Presuming she was hearing things, the newsreader continued to walk, and the voice faded out, only to become louder again as she moved further away from her original stopping point. Perplexed and understandably shaken, the newsreader mentioned the occurrence on her radio show. Within minutes, the lines were flooded with callers with similar stories to tell. Many workers from the Jervis Centre claimed to have seen the figure of a woman in an old nurse's uniform wandering between the stores, while others reported instances of fruit being tossed through the air by an unseen force. Some of these people had even interacted daily with the spirits. While approaching the center's bathrooms, one was eyed by a woman who whispered inaudibly at him before vanishing into thin air, and several more men mentioned having met another female spirit who blew flirtatiously into their ears before likewise disappearing.
Leap Castle, County Offaly. Of the many haunted castles in Ireland, Leap Castle, with a history that is steeped in betrayal and murder, it was murder, Sam, is possibly the most notorious of all. The castle is also one of the most well-known symbols of haunted Ireland, having achieved fame the world over due to appearances in TV shows such as Ghost Adventures and Most Haunted, from the Red Lady who roams the castle clutching a blade to the discovery in the 1920s of hundreds of skeletal remains. This is a building with a past that is both deeply disturbing and entirely unnerving. One of the most unsettling tales contained is the history of the castle's dark past is the story of brothers Thaddeus and Teague O'Connell. If I'm not pronouncing them right, I apologize. Following their father's deaths, the two brothers found themselves locked in a succession battle to determine leadership of their clan. Thaddeus, the older brother and a priest, was saying mass when Teague entered the chapel and fatally stabbed him, thus inheriting the title of chief. From that day to this, The chapel where Thaddeus was brutally slain and is now said to haunt has been known as the Bloody Chapel. It may surprise you to learn that despite the numerous spirits that haunt the building, Leap Castle is in fact a family home. Musician Sean Ryan, who bought Ireland's most haunted castle in the 1990s, still lives there today.
The puka is a shape-shifting trickster spirit of Celtic folklore that usually takes the form of a domestic animal or a human with telltale animal features, such as large ears, fur, or a tail. According to Johnny Dillon, a folklorist at University College Dublin, sometimes a puka can be decidedly more monstrous, though still pastoral. Part bullock, part pig, and part mule. In any case, the beast's MO is to abduct wayfarers at night, taking them on frightening cross-country ride, and leaving them back at their point of departure at dawn. It is often associated with Halloween, a significant holiday in Ireland that coincides with Samhain, the autumn festival marking the end of the harvest season. The puka is said to destroy any crops not picked before November 1st. Puka can bless humans with good luck or protection, but can also steal from, terrify, or bewitch us. It's thought best to avoid them, or to ward them off with charms, spurs, and cold iron. As then, 80-year-old farmer Willie Rourke of County Roscommon told Jim Delaney, a full-time collector with the Irish Folklore Commission, in 1968, the puka often appears to lone travelers on rural roads and paths after dark, especially in fall or winter. He sometimes appears as an old man coming up the road with a big stick under his arm and a big whisker on him. After November night, no one would be called out. Any child would be called out after that. The puka would bring him off, stick his two horns into him, and carry him off. This isn't to say this terrifying creature didn't have a sense of humor. In horse form, the puka are most famous for flinging drunk pedestrians onto their backs and galloping off at breakneck speed. According to then 82-year-old farmer Patrick Johnson of County Westmill, in a 1964 interview with Delaney, the puka would come behind you and he'd run his head right into your legs, and he'd hoist you back on him, and away he'd start. And he'd tear you through bushes, and he'd tear you through ditches, and you'd get all torn, and he'd fling you off, and you'd think you had enough of it. Johnson added that at least on one occasion, he had heard of a man subduing and escaping the spirit with a magic word, and a prod of his left hand with his thumb on his side. The tactic allowed the man to dismount relatively unharmed, even though, like many puka riders, this fella had a good sup of drink in him. There is one legendary example of a person mounting and riding puka by choice. Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland, about 1,000 years ago. He is said to have performed this astonishing feat by making a bridle that incorporated several strands of the beast's hair. The result of this legend, there are a few agricultural traditions surrounding the puka at that time of year. In some countries, farmers leave a bit of their harvested crops out for the puka so he'll be well fed and in a good mood on November 1st, which is considered the puka's day, the one day of the year when the beast will be benevolent. He may dispense advice, perform acts of charity, or dole out prophecies. One example of a benevolent puka behavior comes from another old legend. On a cold night, a farmer's son felt the puka's presence and offered him a coat. To return the favor, it made a habit of milling the family's corn into flour during the night, and they were blessed with financial prosperity and fertile soil. When the puka finally left the humble Irish farm for good. It left the family with a gold cup filled with a strange happiness-inducing drink. Whether their evening ended with a ride on the Puka's back, however, no one can remember.
And our last place we'll visit in Ireland, for me anyway, is the Hellfire Club in Dublin. Mount Pellier Hill, or the Hellfire Club, is an old hunting lodge set in the Dublin Mountains with a very strange past indeed. Founded in the 18th century by Richard Parsons, a Freemason and the first Earl of Ross, the Hellfire Club invited its members to deviate from the social norms of the day and take a walk on the wild side of life. If the Hellfire Club had a motto, then it was probably anything goes. From debauched behavior to satanic rituals, it seems that nothing was off limits for members of the Hellfire Club. Indeed, it is said that the ultimate aim for the members of the Hellfire Club was to summon Satan himself to their meetings. To this effect, members of the club, led by their president, the King of Hell, dabbled in black magic and conducted black masses. Can you imagine being the King of Hell's wife? Like they're in an argument, fuck King of Hell's meatloaf wasn't done right. And she's like, just shut up, Johnny. And he's like, do you understand that I'm a King of Hell? Anyway, this King of Hell dabbled in black magic and conducted black masses. If legend is to be believed, the Hellfire Club also sacrificed animals and even dabbled in cannibalism, sacrificing and then consuming a servant girl in their quest to summon the Dark Lord.
On October 14th, 1954, Flight Lieutenant James R. Sunlandon, flying a Meteor twin-jet fighter plane, narrowly avoided collision with an unidentified flying object over Southend-on-Sea, Essex. Jimmy Sunlandon was one of the weekend pilots of number 604 County of Middlesex Squadron, Royal Auxiliary Air Force. He had reported for duty at North Weald, Essex, on the afternoon of October 14th, and at 4:15 p.m. took off in his Meteor Mark 8 jet, climbing southward into a blue and cloudless sky. He soon observed two other meteors flying in formation high above him and leaving long vapor trails. Back in those days, they had vapor trails. They didn't lace them with chemicals and try to poison everyone. Flight Lieutenant Sunlandon watched the passage of the two aircraft while occasionally checking his instruments. He had reached 16,000 feet over the outlying districts of Southend, when, to his surprise, he saw two circular objects traveling in the opposite direction to the meteors hurtle between them. One of the objects was silvery in color, and the other was gold. Sunlandon watched them until they disappeared at the 9 o'clock high position to his port, or left side. After checking his own instruments, he turned his gaze to the air in front of him. His surprise turned to horror, for he saw a silvery object streaking straight toward him. For a few split seconds, he saw a thing that had a bun-shaped top, a flange like two saucers in the middle, and a bun underneath. It could not have been far off because it overlapped the windscreen. The flying saucer, which was traveling at tremendous speed, avoided a head-on collision at the very last second by suddenly swerving off past the jet on its port side. Badly shaken, the flight lieutenant flew around quietly for 10 minutes or so to regain his composure, and reported his experience to ground control. He was annoyed, too, when he realized later that his camera, standard equipment on combat aircraft, had been loaded all the time with Everything happening so quickly, he didn't have time to press the button. A valuable opportunity to gather evidence for ufology had been missed.
Just the name of this place sounds scary to me. And we took a little trip to England, visited Polly Chadwick on the way, and this one's called Cold Christmas Church. The derelict remains of St. Mary's and All Saints Church is situated in rural Thundridge, Herefordshire. Although the building is Grade 2 listed, all that remains is the old stone tower and abandoned graveyard. These ruins are often known to the locals as Cold Christmas Church, adopting the name of the nearby village of the same name. Cold Christmas Church dates back to 1086 and was built in the grounds of the estate, which was owned by, these names they give us, by Hugh de Desmasnel. The church was built and intended for private family use only. The church was eventually demolished in 1853, leaving only the 15th century tower that you can still see there today. The church was said to have been built on the wrong alignment, which was north to south instead of east to west, like many other churches. Many medieval churches were built in this way, and later in time people believed that this was the sign of the devil. Along with the ruined tower, the graveyard still remains. These have not been maintained over the years. Many headstones have fallen down and have been broken. Nature and the elements have now taken over. It has been said that there is a mausoleum in the graveyard, and mass burial graves lie under where the old church once stood. It is believed that the graves which lie in the abandoned graveyard belong mainly to young children. It is said that one very cold Christmas time, the children of the village were hit the worst by the cold weather, and it led to their deaths. It was after this supposed tragedy the villagers decided to change the name of the village to Cold Christmas. The church has been well documented as being used by witches to perform certain rituals. It is also said that it has been used by devil worshippers and the occult. There are many stories of alleged paranormal activity happening in and around the tower. These range from sounds of growling, reportedly coming from within the tower, to deep, breathy sounds, which have often been heard by people around the area of the graves. In 1978, a lady walking through grounds of the church was reported to have come face to face with a marching army. They appeared to have come through the door of the tower and marched right up to the lady and straight through her. There are numerous other reports of strange and unexplained things happening in and around the tower. Cold Christmas Church. It was nice seeing you, Polly.
No culture is as fun-loving or lighthearted as Germany, but there is also a darker side. Thousands of years of division and hardship have left Germany with countless twisted legends, like this one. The Werewolf of Moorbach. In a remote district of Germany can be found the tiny village of Moorbach. Nothing much happens in Moorbach today, but locals tell of a time when people across Europe knew of them. The way they describe it, there was once a notorious werewolf called Jonas Schweitzer. While the Napoleonic Wars tore apart Europe, he roamed freely, terrorizing the German countryside as he went. Cursed by God for committing war crimes, he was to live as a monster until his death. For years he seemed unstoppable, but on arriving in Moorbach, something happened. Somehow the impoverished locals of this unknown village killed the Wolfman, the last of his kind in Europe. To commemorate this, a single candle was lit. Strangely, that candle never burned out, not for hundreds of years. It was only in 1988 when that candle finally burned out. Within days, new reports emerged of a monstrous creature lurking in the forests. The reports only stopped when a new candle was lit. As that new candle still burns away to this day, it remains one of the most notorious German legends of all.
Here are some chilling tales from the Black Forest of Germany. Located in southwest Germany, the Black Forest is a region known for its spectral beauty and mysterious folklore. It has been an inspiration for many stories throughout the years, including some truly eerie tales. From witches to lost souls, these stories will give you goosebumps. So settle in dark placers, and prepare to be spooked by these chilling tales from the Black Forest of Germany. The Witch of Hinterkaifeck. This story dates back to 1922, when a farmer and his family were found brutally murdered in their home located in the heart of the forest. To this day, no one knows who killed them or why they were targeted. What's even more peculiar is that witnesses reported seeing a strange woman lurking around the farm before and after the murders took place. Some say she was a witch who cast a deadly spell on the family, while others insist it was simply an unrelated serial killer who happened to stumble upon them. No matter what you believe, this mystery remains unsolved and utterly terrifying.
What about the Naziava? Hiding in the forests of northern Germany can be found terrifying undead monsters. By night, these hideous beings emerge to feed on human flesh. They themselves were once human, but after committing suicide, were cursed by God to forever walk the earth. Now they are driven by a constant hunger for flesh. While their own flesh rots away, the more they consume, the longer their own lifeless body will survive. And so every night they head to graveyards, burial grounds, and cemeteries, anywhere dead bodies can be found. It is easy to recognize them for their long fangs, the smell of their rotting flesh, and the odd grunting sound they make. But approaching them would be a mistake. The only known way to kill them is decapitation, and even that doesn't always work. To prevent a loved one from becoming like them, you must remove their head before the funeral. Forget to do this, and a person could well rise again.
The Grimm's Brothers' Tales. It's no surprise that two of Germany's most famous authors found inspiration in the dark woods surrounding their homeland. The brothers Grimm wrote hundreds of stories set within the woods, including tales such as Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, Snow White, and Cinderella. While these stories are certainly enchanting, they can also be quite dark at times. The original versions feature plenty of spine-tingling moments that will keep you up at night. You know, these Brothers Grimm, I think it would be more fun to call people Brothers Grimm than Grimm Brothers. Like, for example, the Hardy Boys would be like the Brothers Hardy. I don't know. Sounds more professional. The Watcher of Shonak. I don't know. Since 1990, locals living near Shonak have reported seeing a mysterious figure watching them from afar. Witnesses describe him as being tall with long black hair and pale skin, almost as if he were undead. Some suggest he could be an escaped prisoner from a nearby prison camp. Others claim he may be an evil spirit seeking revenge for an ancient wrong committed against his people centuries ago. Whatever truth lies behind this creepy tale remains unknown.
The Mummel Lake, or Mummel Sea, is a 10,000-year-old glacial lake that is said to be the home of water fairies, or Mummel. There are several folklores surrounding the water nymphs, or water lilies, in Mummel Sea. There is a belief that the nymphs, or water lilies, will come out every night to bathe. Some say that the nymphs are actually the nuns that lived in the monastery nearby. Once a nun fell in love with a farmer, and the entire monastery was swallowed by the lake.
Curses in the woods. This particular story is said to date back to 1590, when villagers caught 3 witches practicing black magic deep within the forest's darkest depths. After being captured and put on trial, all 3 women were sentenced to death by burning at the stake, but not before one final curse was uttered. When your children walk through my woods again, centuries later, they shall know true terror. To this day, there are still reports of people feeling unusually scared while walking through certain parts of the forest late at night. Duh!
The legend of the helpful little glass man. There are many stories about the helpful little glass man. There are also some variations of the legend, not to mention all the fairy tales inspired by the little glass man. Basically, it is nothing more than a helpful little man who helps people or even fulfills their wishes. The helpful little glass man appears in the famous fairy tale, The Cold Heart, by Willem Hoff. The main character of the fairy tale is Peter, who is fed up with his life as a charcoal burner. He would much rather be respected and rich, like the raftsman Ezekiel. When he finds the glass man in the forest, he is granted 3 wishes. To the annoyance of the glass man, all Peter wants is wealth. He gets it, but he can't handle it. Due to his lack of sense, he gambles away all his wealth. He then meets the notorious Dutchman Michael. The Dutch Michael offers him prestige and wealth throughout his life. All he has to do is swap his beating heart for a heart of stone. Peter agrees, and all his wishes are granted. He even marries the most beautiful girl in the whole area, but because of his heart of stone, he cannot love it. Later, he even rejects his mother and kills his wife. In the end, the story still has a happy ending. Together with the little glass man, he outwits Dutchman Michael and gets his heart back. His warm feelings bring even his wife back to life. Now he is poor, but happy.
The lost souls of the Black Forest. According to legend, there are numerous lost souls wandering through the woods looking for redemption from their past sins. Most notably, those cursed by witches centuries ago. Though these poor souls wander endlessly through its paths, hoping one day they'll find peace in death and perhaps even salvation along their journey. Whether or not this story is true remains unknown, but it's certainly enough to make anyone think twice about venturing too far into these dark woods. From witches' curses to spectral figures lurking in shadows, the Black Forest has provided us with plenty of spooky tales over time, which are sure to keep you up late at night thinking about what might lurk out there among the trees. Whether you believe any of them or not, it's up to you, but it's always fun and sometimes scary imagining what might be hiding inside these ancient woods. Germany's Black Forest. Gonna put it on you.
Legends, as a rule, tend to reflect the anxieties of the times. In the 1960s and 70s, the Soviet Union was at the height of the Cold War, with party leadership projecting a vision for life and prosperity that differed from that of the materialistic West. Symbols of decadence and luxury, like owning one's own car, were a source of both envy and anxiety, which makes it no surprise when people started whispering about the demonic vehicle terrorizing Moscow neighborhoods. The black limousine in question was a Volga, a distinctly Soviet make, and it was said to slink through the city looking for children to abduct. Sightings were claimed in every quarter, and nobody was able to see the driver. There were rumors that the car was driven by a group of deranged nuns, while others said the chauffeur was Satan himself. Eventually, people claimed the Volga's side mirrors were actually horns. The legend is interesting for how it provided a way for spiritual, even superstitious anxieties to surface in an outwardly enthusiastic state. Not unlike with Bulgakov's classic The Master and Margarita. Even more interestingly, black Volga cars were only available for party members and representatives of the Soviet elite. Perhaps there was more to the stories of disappearances than first meets the eye. And that brings us to the end of our European vacation. We hope you enjoyed our little trip, and we'll see you again right here next week. Thanks as always, Jimmy Haunted, and thank you for listening. Safe travels. God bless.